How dumb is Donald Trump and those around him? That wasn't rhetorical. He continues to undermine his legal arguments, which he obviously does not understand, nor does anybody in his administration, about that the tariffs are taxes on the American people. And if tariffs are taxes, he loses at the Supreme Court in an argument that his lawyers just made this past week. Because tariffs as taxes means that it's only Congress and it's Article 1 powers that can't be delegated to the president. Yet he continues to brag about the trillions of dollars that are brought in by way of tariffs as taxes. And so does Scott Bessent as Treasury Secretary, and so does Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary. You'd think they were trying to do this on purpose. I cover it on Legal AF, the podcast, and here's a clip. Let me turn to the tariffs for a minute. And I spotted something, and it's gotten some traction now. I see it in reporting about a major blunder that was made by John Sauer, the Solicitor General for the United States. He's the guy you can't listen to. Sounds like he gargled with a pot of bourbon and broken pavement. You know that guy? Now, I think he's got some sort of condition, so I'm not here to violate the ADA and say, but he is hard to listen to. You know, I've got friends that have speech impediments that are successful trial lawyers. There's a famous lawyer in Miami who I'm very close with, have been in the past, who has a stutter. And he's a magnificent trial advocate. So I'm not, you know, but he's hard to listen to. And he also has this habit, which is not a medical condition, of trying to pack, 50 pounds of potatoes into a 10-pound sack of argument. He almost is like, he's getting paid by the word. Whatever could be said eloquently in 20 words, John Sauer says, well, 500 words. I could do it in 500 words, 1,000 words. And he double talks constantly. He sounds like a fast talking, double talking snake oil salesman, like used car salesman. And it's starting to grate. Talk about make America great again. It's starting to grate on members of the Supreme Court. You can tell by the oral argument. His major faux pas and blunder is he painted himself into a corner about tariffs aren't taxes. Tariffs aren't revenue producing. Because we all know that's a lie. And he put it in his brief. He put in his brief that it's raising revenue. He quoted Donald Trump extolling the virtues of tariffs to replace lost income and the trillions of dollars that came into the Treasury to help the American economy. Just like Donald Trump did on Inauguration Day, talking about him creating a external revenue service to replace income tax by using tariffs as income producing, revenue producing. So let me play first for you the clip of John Sauer getting led down the primrose path and painted into a corner, to mix my metaphors there, mix my sayings, by, of all people, Chief Justice John Roberts. Let's play the clip.
But I mean, and I think this is a question for the other side as well. It's two-facing. Yes, of course, tariffs and dealings with foreign powers, but the vehicle is imposition of taxes on Americans, and that has always been the core power of Congress. So to have the president's foreign affairs power trump that basic power for Congress seems to me to kind of at least neutralize between the two powers, the executive power and the legislative power.
Let me say two things in response to that. First, the notion that the taxes are all borne by Americans and are not borne by foreign producers whose goods are imported is empirically, there's no basis for that in the record. It's actually a mix.
Well, who pays the tariffs? If a tariff is imposed on automobiles, who pays them?
Typically there'd be regardless of who the importer of record is, there'd be a contract that would go along the sort of line of transfer that would allocate the tariff, and there'd be different. Sometimes the foreign producer would pay them. Sometimes the importer would bear the cost. The importer could be an American, could be a foreign company. A lot of times it's a wholly owned American subsidiary of a foreign corporation. So it gets allocated. The empirical estimates range from like 30% to 80% of like how much is borne by American
I mean, it's
citizens.
been suggested that the tariffs are responsible for significant reduction in our deficit. I would say that's raising revenue domestically.
There certainly is an incidental and collateral effect of the tariffs that they do raise revenue, but it's very important that they are regulatory tariffs, not revenue-raising tariffs. And the way you can see this, I think, if you look at this policy.
Revenue is incidental. It's policy and regulatory. Now, why does he keep saying that? Because the statute that he's relying on to try to steal Article 1 power from Congress talks about regulation and licenses. So he's got to try to fit this ridiculously triangle peg into a round hole about that tariffs are regulatory and or that they're licenses and that they're not revenue generating, that they're not taxes. And you see how well he did with that ridiculous tap dance in front of a justice that should have been on his side. Especially when the American people remember things like Donald Trump on his inauguration talking about the External Revenue Service and raising money like taxes through tariffs. And as the justices reminded John Sauer, even though it was in his brief, that is solely the province of Congress and it's non-delegable. They can't send it off to Trump, just like they can't, the Article 3 can't allow Donald Trump to create his own court system. How would they like that? The executive branch has a court system now, an economic court created with the war powers and the foreign affair powers of the president, which this Supreme Court seems to love, bends over backwards to give Donald Trump as many foreign affairs and Article 2 powers that they can find. How about if he sets up his own court? How would you like that, competing with you on interpreting economic regulation related to foreign-facing issues? I mean, that's the next step. They wouldn't like that. It's when it's their turf. They shouldn't like it when it's Congress's turf. And so they were reminded, Sauer was reminded time and time again, that it's the power to tax and to raise money has to go through both chambers of Congress by a majority and then signed by a president before people get bites taken out of their wallets. Not the president imposing a tariff that gets passed along as a tax to consumers. Let me play you the clip of Trump talking about the External Revenue Service, which completely undermines their argument that tariffs are only incidental revenue producers. Let's play the clip.
Instead of taxing our citizens to enrich other countries, we will tariff and tax foreign countries to enrich our citizens. For this purpose, we are establishing the External Revenue Service to collect all tariffs, duties, and revenues. It will be massive amounts of money pouring into our treasury, coming from foreign sources. The American dream will soon be back and thriving like never before.
Bad for him. Let me just give you my overview. Amy Coney Barrett is not in favor. I don't think she's going to vote for the president having tariff power under the International Economic Emergency Powers Act, which was a limiting statute given to Jimmy Carter in 1977 to stop him from stealing power from Congress. Not one with this capacious superpowers for a president, which violates the non-delegation doctrine, violates the major questions doctrine created by the Roberts Court to kill Biden policies, which stands for the proposition that if it's a major issue, like giving the power of the tariff and tax to a president, it has to be expressly spelled out in a statute, not done by implication or word association or construction of a statute, that Congress doesn't hide an elephant in a mouse hole, if you know what I mean. And so if you read the statutory construction, if you look at the meaning of Article 1 about the power to tax and to tariff being held by Congress, if you use the major questions doctrine, if you use the non-delegation doctrine, Donald Trump loses and should lose. I think Amy Coney Barrett is over with Sotomayor, Kagan, and Ketanji Brown Jackson. So we have 4 votes against Donald Trump's tariffs. We have 3 votes in favor. I think it's Alito, Thomas, and Kavanaugh. That leaves Gorsuch and Roberts. By the questioning, it looks to me like Gorsuch is not going to give the president, any president, the power to tax through tariff. He said things like it's a one-way ratchet. Congress could never get the power back. This goes back to taxation without representation with the Boston Tea Party. He wasn't buying that the revenue isn't a tax or isn't revenue enhancing or revenue collecting. If he votes the way his questions were asked and him being dissatisfied with the answers, this should now be at least 5-4. Roberts too, just on the major questions doctrine, should be 5-4. But we'll have to see. You can't trust this administration. You can't trust this Supreme Court. So we'll follow it. I think we'll get a ruling within 3 to 6 months. In the meantime, they're letting Donald Trump collect all the money. There was a chilling moment for the Trump administration, which I'm going to play for you now, when Amy Coney Barrett said to the advocates to tear down the tariffs, suppose we rule in your favor. How do we pay back the money? How does the Trump administration pay back the money? Sounds like it'd be a little bit messy, right? In fact, let me play that clip.
And then if you win, tell me how the reimbursement process would work. Would it be a complete mess? I mean, you're saying before the government promised reimbursement, and now you're saying, well, that's rich, but how would this work? It seems to me like it could be a mess.
So the first thing I'd say is that just underscores just how major a question this is. The very fact that you were dealing with this with quotas, there's no refund process to the tunes of billions of dollars or embargoes, but there is here. But for our case, the way it would work is, in this case, the government stipulated for the 5 plaintiffs that they would get the refunds. So for us, that's how it would work. Your question, I take it, is about everyone else. We don't have a class action or anything like that. With respect to everyone else, there's a whole specialized body of trade law, and it's in 19 U.S.C. 1514 outlines all these administrative procedures. It's a very complicated thing. There's got to be an administrative protest. There was a harbor management case earlier that this court was involved with in the United States Shoe, in which, the refund process took a long time. There were any number of claims and equitable relief.
So a mess.
So it's difficult,
okay.
Absolutely. We don't deny that it's difficult, but I think what this court has said in the McKesson case in 1990 is that serious economic dislocation isn't a reason to do something. Northern Pipeline, you guys stayed your decision for a while in order to let the congressional process unfold. There may be a congressional process here as well. You may be able to also be that this court could limit its decision to prospective relief under the John Q. Hammons case. So there's lots of possibilities.
Well, she didn't care about it being messy when they ripped away for 50 years a woman's right to choose and the havoc it played on women's health and autonomy and body autonomy. So now she's worried about how money is going to be transferred back. I don't know. They can either do it refund. They haven't spent the money. Reallocate the money, pay it back over time to the American people, give it to them as a tax deduction, refund by tax deduction, give it to them as a credit on their taxes so everybody gets it back. That's one way. You can make it prospective, although that doesn't help the businesses out of business right now, and only end it now, but let the government keep the money. But I don't know how the government keeps the money if their actions were unconstitutional. The only way to fix it, the only remedy is to give the money back. But the fact that she even is worried about that should be concerning and keeping the Trump administration up at night. And of course, they're whistling in the graveyard or past the graveyard because you've got, Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, with a big Cheshire cat smile, smiling on CNBC. We won! You heard it here first. We have won this. Is it possible we're all wrong? It's possible. I thought they lost the immunity argument, although when you listen to it closely, the people that I've identified, like Gorsuch and Roberts, were siding with the president in those questionings. But we'll continue to follow that. I want to take on one more major topic, which I thought was interesting, which might give us a window into how this Supreme Court may rule on the issue, as I manage expectations. Welcome back. Proud to say I co-founded Legal AF 5 years ago. We sit at the intersection of law and politics. We're on podcast version, hour-long length. If you like that clip, you're going to love the hour-long version of it. It's over on YouTube here. It's over on podcast platforms like Apple and Spotify, commercial-free versions over on Legal AF Substack. Help us continue to grow. Help us keep us at the top of the rankings. Help Legal AF YouTube crash through the 1 million subscribers ceiling, which gives us the street credibility we need to continue to bring you the reporting that you deserve and that you crave. And I'll continue to do it here, 40 videos a week for me, Michael Popok, between Meidas and Legal AF. So until my next report, I'm Michael. I'm Michael Popok, and I got some big news for our audience. Most of you know me as the co-founder of MeidasTouch's Legal AF and the Legal AF YouTube channel, or as a 35-year national trial lawyer. Now, building on what we started together on Legal AF, I've launched a new law firm, the Popok Firm, dedicated to obtaining justice through compassionate and zealous legal representation. At the Popok Firm, we are focused on obtaining justice for those who have been injured or damaged by a life-altering event by securing the highest dollar recoveries. I've been tirelessly fighting for justice for the last 35 years, so my own law firm organically building on my Legal AF work just feels right. And I've handpicked a team of top-tier trial fighters and settlement experts throughout all 50 states known as big auto injury attorneys who have the know-how to beat heartless insurance companies, corporations, government entities, and their attorneys. Big Auto's attorneys working with my firm are rock stars in their respective states and collectively responsible for billions of dollars in recoveries. So if you or a loved one have been on the wrong side of a catastrophic auto, motor vehicle, rideshare, or truck accident, suffered a personal injury, or been the victim of medical malpractice, employment harassment or discrimination, or suffered a violation of your civil and constitutional rights, then contact the Popok Firm today at 1-877-POPOK-AF or by visiting my website at www.thepopokfirm.com and fill out a free case evaluation form. And if we determine that you have a case and you sign with us, we don't get paid unless you do. The Popok Firm, fighting for your justice every step of the way.